Well, good morning, everyone. And once again, welcome to another live here, a little different this morning. And I'm on the road. I'm speaking at a conference actually here for a week. So all week we're going to do a little bit different time. And sorry for not giving you more notice about that. Let me first get you folks to let me know whether you can see me and hear me. Okay, so if we can just give me a couple of waves. Oh, there it is. Mary, how are you? Okay, you can see me, hear me, and Marlene, good morning, and Yvonne, and Kevin, there's my buddy, and Jocelyn, good morning, guys, and Jerry, Nouveau Brunswick, Nick from our staff. I just told my staff. Okay, Jeanette and from our staff, how are you? Chantal Hamner, good morning to you. We appreciate. Jerry says looking good. Well, Jerry, you need glasses. And Tina, Lenora, Wendy, there you are, Wendy from Markham, good morning. Nicole and Donna, good morning from Guelph. Good morning, Donna. Paul, Madeleine, how are you? And Zian, bonjour. Deb from Timmins, good morning. Okay, Linda, Nouveau Brunswick. And Sandy, good morning. Manette, how are you? And Donna from Bell Valley, Jeanette Kapaskasing. And Francis from Vaughan, good morning. And Milika, how you doing? I missed you, Sharon. I didn't mean to. Linda from St. Jude, Quebec. And you know how much we love those Lindas. Denise, good morning. Leela. Couple of more here, guys, and we'll get going. Tammy, Penatang. And Patricia from Etobicoke. Vince, good morning. Guys, we appreciate you coming on. Laurie, Niagara Falls. And this is a little bit of an early notice. I just got my schedule here. Sandy from Washington, Sharon. So we're a little bit early. So all week, okay, guys, I'm just going to tell you this. All week I'm scheduled now to come on at 5 o'clock. So, did I just say that? 8 a.m. Eastern, okay? Are we still daylight saving? 8 a.m. daylight saving time, okay? So just for the week, I got my schedule. I'm speaking at a conference here and in the mornings, and it just doesn't work out any other time. I've got to do it at 8 o'clock. I want to do this morning, and we'll do a little bit of a shortened version here this week, okay? But what I want to talk to you about is this. I read this, anxiety, okay? So this came out in the last few days. Anxiety has overtaken depression in terms of the #1 condition in mental health, okay? So anxiety has taken over depression in terms of the #1 issue in mental health, okay? And we've talked about that in the past, the amount of anxiety that we see. But listen to this, okay? This is according to this article that I read. It's 800. Anxiety is 800 times more prevalent than cancer, than any cancer. And so, you know, would we not call that an epidemic? I mean, really, when you think that there's that much anxiety in the world. And I just want to talk about that because it's so true. Anxiety really changed my practice in a lot of ways because two things, okay? And I actually wrote a book about it. 2 hormones that want you dead. Okay? Cortisol And we all know what cortisol is. Cortisol is that kind of hormone that's released from the adrenal glands, okay? So anxiety comes from cortisol. Now, the fight or flight, cortisol, okay? You've got two things happening with your autonomic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. You got rest and digest, or you got fight or flight. What's happened in the world is that we've gone from mostly resting and digesting to fight or flight. And that's taken over the world. I remember Tony Jr. and I talking about this. This was probably, I'm going to say 2005 or whatever. And I noticed it in my practice that because I was testing cortisol, and the reason I tested cortisol so consistently goes way back before that. Because what I was specializing in for years and years and years was chronic fatigue syndrome. Now, in chronic fatigue syndrome, that is what I found in my practice with chronic fatigue syndrome, consistent. Mostly women, wasn't always women, but it was mostly women. So right away, I'm thinking hormones, okay? Or, as I love to say to my women, hormones, okay? So I was really cognizant of hormonal imbalances. And when I tested for chronic fatigue syndrome and people that would come into my office and patients, and because I would look and see what was happening to their adrenal glands. I wrote a book about that. Chronic fatigue syndrome, the modern woman's curse. That was one of my first books that I ever published. And I mean, I think we sold over 50,000 copies of that book in the late 80s. It was huge because it was happening in the world and people didn't know what the issue was. So I was suggesting way back then that it was adrenal gland exhaustion. So why? Well, the adrenals, again, are made. You've got two little glands, adrenals. They're little chestnut-sized glands on top of your kidneys. And what they're meant for is the fight or flight. And that can save your life. Somebody's chasing you. You're going to turn around and fight, or you're going to kick and run. Scream and run. The fight or flight. The problem with cortisol is when cortisol doesn't get turned off. So way back, late 80s, chronic fatigue syndrome. The modern woman's curse was adrenal gland exhaustion. That's what I postulated, and that's what I wrote about. And literally thousands and thousands and thousands of women over the years, I would test their hormones when nobody else was. Nobody was looking at cortisol because listen, you just have to understand the training of a physician. The only time they think of the adrenal glands is if you've got Addison's disease or Cushing's. And they used to tell these patients, you know, before they came and see me, I was never the first doctor that they would come and see. I mean, rarely, okay? It was because, Doc, I'm so exhausted. I'm so exhausted. But they can't find anything wrong. They test my thyroid, they test, they do all the blood work, and, generally everything was coming back within normal limits. And I said, well, did they test your cortisol? Did they test your adrenals? What? No. They didn't even mention it. But you see, guys, that's really, really an issue, is cortisol. And, you know, like I was saying in about 2005 or whatever, Tony Jr. and I were talking about this, and we, you know, like, Dad, it's like an epidemic. And guys, if you think it was bad back then, you should see it today. They're saying that almost 40 million Americans suffer with anxiety on a daily basis. The numbers are crazy. That's 40 million is the population of Canada. So there's tens of millions of people that suffer with anxiety. Now the Bible says this about anxiety. It's always interesting in Proverbs that anxiety leads to depression. Proverbs 12 and 25. Anxiety is the first step in depression. And that's interesting. When, you know, because, you know, in medicine, again, if it's not Addison's, if it's not Cushing's disease, they dismiss the adrenal glands. I used to call the adrenals the Rodney Dangerfield of your body. And the reason is because they get no respect. Nobody even thinks about these things generally unless they think you have a disease. And yet, we all know that anxiety is real and what happens. And let me just get into a little bit of some of the low-hanging fruit when it comes to the adrenals, okay? And this is again compounded. Think about this for a minute. If you don't sleep, your cortisol goes up. If your cortisol goes up, you don't sleep. Okay? So the low-hanging fruit in adrenal gland exhaustion or with high levels of cortisol over a period of time, which can lead to anxiety, is the lack of sleep. It's the chicken or the egg. What comes first? And so this is really, really important when you look at it. One of the low-hanging fruits is a lack of sleep. And that affects the body. And we all know what happens in the brain when we don't sleep. The self-cleaning oven doesn't work. Your glial system. It is so amazing that your body, your brain has a self-cleaning oven. I love that, don't you? But it doesn't work if you don't sleep. So cortisol is lack of sleep is a big issue. And anxiety results from that. Or you get anxiety and you can't sleep. Like I said, the chicken or the egg. Poor diet has a big effect on the adrenals. I discovered this, you got to go back into the late 80s, early 90s, when part of my protocol for people that were suffering with anxiety, plus all the symptoms of chronic fatigue syndrome, I used to put them on a low sugar diet or no sugar. It was always amazing what happened to people when they got off the sugars. If you do nothing else, you know why, of course, you know, in the most recent years, in the last 10 years or so of my practice, I set up the reset, the metabolic reset, and that was eggs, meat, and cheese for everyone for 30 days. And it was amazing what would happen. But even before that, and I wrote about this in my book on chronic fatigue syndrome, is diet has a big effect on cortisol. Insulin, okay? Insulin, when you eat carbohydrates, you need insulin. Pretty, you know, too many carbs, your insulin goes up. Insulin goes up, your cortisol goes up. It's part of the package. And that's why I wrote that book, Two Hormones That Want You Dead, insulin and cortisol. They often go together. You have to address that issue. And so this was a key. So diet, I cleaned up their diet. It really had a major effect, not only on lowering insulin, but it had a major effect on lowering cortisol and helping and regenerating the body. Now, the other thing is nutrients, because I was a guy that was, obviously in my nutrition field. I was a guy that looked for deficiencies. My office was hormones, checking, all of them. From the thyroid to the adrenals, to the ovaries and ladies, okay? And combining those, and the pancreas, insulin, okay? And guys, this was key to, and then I would look for deficiencies. Whenever I saw anxiety, whenever I saw a case of anxiety, I was always looking for deficiencies. And here is some of the common ones. Now, I bet you guys are already guessing which were some of the common deficiencies. I bet you, my audience, you guys know these things, but I'm going to just go over them anyways. 1, okay, numero uno, vitamin B12, deficient. Almost consistently. And maybe their blood test for B12 was within normal limits. But normal limits really, first of all, guys, B12 blood testing is about 100 years old, okay? It's time we give it a birthday party and put it to bed. I still love B12 testing, I do. But what I mean is the results for B12 testing, okay? The results, they're so skewed because, when they talked 100 years ago about averages, they got an average. So you get, 200 to 600. And if it's anything over 400 or whatever, they consider that high, or 500. Guys, you need to be up around 800 to 1200 for your B12 to be optimized. And when you have anxiety, B12 is a big factor. We all know it's a big factor in depression. B12 is a big factor. And so we saw consistently low levels of B12. Consistently low levels of vitamin D. And so these were key. And, to look at these things, low levels of magnesium. And unfortunately, okay, and even today, I've discussed this with physicians. Today, if you order a magnesium test, okay, it's a blood test. The problem is you have very little magnesium in your blood at the best of times. Magnesium is in your tissue, and they don't measure that. And we found that was a real deficiency of magnesium. Remember, magnesium is the mineral that helps you to relax. Whenever you think of magnesium, relax. It relaxes your muscles. It relaxes your nerves. It relaxes your blood vessels. It relaxes your brain. It relaxes the body. Magnesium is such an important, it relaxes your bowel. It's one of the reasons that I like magnesium citrate, because it is good for the bowel. Now, for some people, it gives them a little bit of a loose stool, and then I flip them over to magnesium biglycinate. But listen, guys, magnesium, I saw, okay, so here's what I saw. deficiencies in vitamin B12, vitamin D in your brain, Viderma. It's so important. And unfortunately, vitamin D in this day and age, even today, here we are in 2023, vitamin D is still getting no respect. There's a war on vitamin D. It's crazy. It's so efficient. Every day, guys, and I'm not kidding you, 7 days a week, I get a new study on the significance of vitamin D. Your brain does not operate properly. Your adrenals do not operate properly without vitamin D. So it's an essential vitamin. And deficiency is so common. And today, again, when you look at numbers, most people, 80-90%, are in the low numbers of vitamin D. They're very deficient, but nobody tells them. You can hardly get a B12 test done. It's sad, okay? Now, the other deficiency was omega-3, oftentimes with omega-3, okay? Deficient. So our protocol was to aim directly at this deficiency. Food first. You know, if you were to build a protocol, food. Start with food. Start with the other one, sleep. The low-hanging fruit. Try and do everything you can to get that body to get into the 5 stages of sleep. Very difficult. One of the biggest problems in our society today. But they're connected. All of these things are connected. Then the other thing we looked at, and I was one of the first guys to start the connection between the gut and the brain. I've been talking about that for so many years, guys, the gut and the brain. What did I see in patients that suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome, and then now patients that suffer from anxiety? Leaky gut, almost invariably. So we looked at those deficiencies. And, you know, of course, there's issues. I mean, you know, when you look at psychological issues, relationship issues, family issues, I always used to like calling it family dynamics. You know, there's always those things. But it's the combination, guys, of these things. And some of the major symptoms associated with anxiety and adrenal glands are, obviously insomnia, brain fog, hair loss, belly fat, exhaustion, cravings for sugar and salt, cravings. And so, anywho, I just wanted to when I read that article on the weekend, I said, I just got to talk about it because it's so common. Now, guys, this is going to be a shortened version today. And remember, like, just keep this in mind for the rest of the week. We are going to do these programs at 8 o'clock, okay? This is, I just got my schedule for speaking here, and it's, this lines up perfectly for 8 o'clock and not our usual time at 8:30. Guys, we love you guys. You know that, right? I thank you for your patience. I thank you for coming on this morning. I hope I didn't wake you up. Okay. And sorry for the lack of heads up. If I had my schedule on Friday, I would have told you earlier. Okay, guys, we love you. We'll talk to you soon.